Would you dare uncover secrets from the past if they could change who you think you are? The muted clang of the thick glass door echoed hollow as Emily stepped out into the cold drizzle that cloaked the coastal town in a gray monotone. Her auburn curls, damp and wild, clung rebelliously to her cheeks, partly shielding the flush that burned through a mix of humiliation and frustrated hope. Under the ghostly halo of a flickering street lamp, she pulled her vintage coat tighter around her slight frame, clutching her camera bag close, its weight a familiar comfort amidst the shadowed streets. Behind her, the towering glass walls of the publishing house glared like a monolith, its interior lights dull and indifferent, where rejection had played out with clinical precision. The voice chorus of polite dismissals and veiled skepticism still haunted her ears, blending with the muted hum of the rain. "Your work is unique, but perhaps not for our current audience," the editor's voice had said, smooth and detached. "We encourage you to keep writing, but this project doesn't align with our vision." Shock gave way to burning shame, each syllable scraping raw against the fragile walls of her self-belief. The weight of countless sleepless nights, endless scribbles in weathered notebooks, and whispered dreams of stories untold seemed to collapse in the cold air. Her steps quickened, the rhythmic patter of rain on old cobblestone pulsing beneath her feet like a heartbeat falling out of sync. The camera bag bumped against her side with each hurried motion a tether to who she was before the rejection, and who she feared she might never be. Passing under the glowing paper lantern of a closed cafe, reflections gleamed on slick pavement, twinkling like distant stars dimmed by fog. Emily's breath misted before her as she exhaled, the cold air sharp enough to sting, pulling her closer to herself and the fragile resilience beneath the despair. Her gaze caught in the cracked window of a nearby antique shop, the faint image of a dusty clock reflected alongside her own haunted eyes. The fractured glass seemed to mirror back the fragments of her identity, each shard catching glimpses of lost confidence and yearning. "You don't fit here," the whispers in her mind repeated relentlessly. But a stubborn flicker of defiance burned beneath their weight, a fragile seed of potential waiting for light. The night wrapped tighter, the salting breeze carrying the secrets of the ocean and the distant cries of unseen creatures. She paused atop the weathered steps leading to the old pier, surveying the restless waves below, their ceaseless motion both unsettling and strangely comforting. Behind her, the dim glow of the town flickered, a place straddling eras, caught between antique charm and the relentless march of digital modernity. Ahead, a narrow winding road stretched into darkness, promising unknown paths. With a slow, determined inhale, Emily turned away from the crushing silence of rejection and stepped forward, her footsteps soft but unwavering. The camera caught the subtle tightening of her jaw, the narrowing of her eyes resolute against the shadowed night. The scene closed on a fragile image, her reflection fractured in the rain-speckled glass, a ghostly silhouette blending past and present, hope and uncertainty, a young woman on the brink of discovery, carried by stories yet to be unveiled. Rain murmured softly against the cracked windowpane of Emily's small apartment, each drop a delicate percussion against the fragile veil of dusk settling outside. The warm amber glow of her desk lamp cast fractured shadows across scattered notebooks and worn pages, the ink blurred here and there as if echoing the tremor in her hands. The room seemed suspended in a quiet limbo, caught between the fading light of hope and the encroaching fog of despair. Emily sat curled beneath a threadbare shawl, her gaze fixed on the empty page before her, a mirror to the blankness spreading slowly within. The hues of sepia and muted blues from the digital clock on the bedside table flickered intermittently, its cold glow stark against the enveloping warmth, mirroring her internal struggle. Two worlds at constant, uneasy variance. Her breath was shallow, the weight of rejection and anchor tightening around her heart. Images from the publishing house played like a silent reel, faces polite yet distant, the undercurrents of dismissal palpable beneath carefully measured words. The echo of their verdict, "not for our audience here," sounded relentlessly, fracturing her fragile conviction with invisible shards. The camera lingered on her fingers, stained faintly with graphite, tracing ghostly motions over the barren paper, each stroke hesitant yet searching. A single tear escaped, catching the light as it slid down her cheek before vanishing into the fabric of her vintage blouse. Outside, a lone crow called into the twilight, its cry sharp and solitary, a lament that seemed to bind the boundless sky to the secrets held within her heart. The gentle flicker of a passing lighthouse beam spilled momentarily through the window, casting long, wavering reflections on the cracked walls, symbols of guidance and warning intertwined. Emily's gaze shifted across the room to a cracked mirror propped against the far wall. Her fractured reflection stared back, fragmented yet unyielding, a silent testament to identity torn between self-doubt and defiant yearning. Each broken shard caught intriguing glimpses of a woman who wore both the scars and the fragile hope of someone standing on the edge of transformation. Her camera bag lay heavily at her feet, overflowing with half-filled notebooks, each a seed of dreams yet to bloom. The subtle scent of aged paper and lavender wrapped around her, a quiet comfort against the chill that seeped through the crevices. In the dimming light, her lips moved soundlessly, whispering a name, a plea, perhaps, to the unseen forces threading through the fabric of time. A soft gust rattled the window, carrying with it a faint, indiscernible melody, an emblem of the past reaching toward the present. Within its fragile strains, the promise of discovery and confrontation hummed softly, unnoticed yet potent. The room held its breath, a fragile pause pregnant with potential. A flicker of determination glimmered in Emily's eyes, faint but unmistakably a subtle shift in the tide of her spirit. And there, amid shadows and light, the thin line between despair and hope began to blur, setting the stage for secrets yet to be unveiled. The late afternoon sun filtered through the stained glass windows of the antique store, casting kaleidoscopic shadows that wavered across Emily's face, a fragile canvas marked by weariness and fragile resolve. The shop was a labyrinth of history, shelves crowded with relics whispering stories long forgotten, and among them, an old, dust-laden diary lay half-hidden beneath a heap of brittle pages and faded photographs. Drawn like a moth to its flame, Emily reached out slowly, the faint sound of ticking from a nearby clock mingling with the quiet murmurs of the shop's secrets. Her fingertips brushed the leather cover, its surface cracked and aged, embossed with intricate patterns resembling vines twisted through time itself. Tentatively, she opened the diary, and a rush of muted sepia light seemed to spill from its pages, illuminating words scrawled in a delicate, looping script strangely familiar, hauntingly intimate. Her breath hitched as the letters revealed themselves to be penned in a handwriting alarmingly close to her own, yet dated over a century ago. Each word resonated within her, stirring a restless echo, a connection threading through epochs, life to life, a hidden story intertwined with her own. The weight of the past pressed cold against her chest, mingling with the warmth of rekindled hope. The shop around her faded into a blur as spectral whispers brushed her ears, voices suspended between realms, urging discovery and caution alike. Shadows stirred in corners, ghostly silhouettes half-seen, beckoning yet elusive. Her eyes lifted to a cracked mirror hanging nearby, fractured shards reflecting a multitude of histories, faces shifting and changing, past selves shimmering in fleeting glimpses. Within the fragmented glass, Emily saw not just her reflection, but a tapestry of identities strung together across time. A sudden chill raced down her spine, and the diary's pages fluttered as if stirred by an unseen breath. A solitary page held a faded photograph, a portrait of a woman bearing an uncanny likeness to Emily, gazing solemnly from a bygone era. A name beneath it, half erased, hinted at secret kinship. A distant toll of a nearby church bell echoed softly, marking the hour like a heartbeat threading present and past into an indelible whole. Emily closed the diary gently, the last vestiges of dust drifting in the warm light, and slipped it carefully into her bag, a talisman bridging fragile realities and beckoning paths yet to be walked. Her gaze steadied, a quiet fire kindling beneath the surface of doubt and despair. The air thrummed with hushed anticipation, as if the threads of fate tightened, weaving a new story laced with courage and revelation. Stepping out onto the rain-wet street, The town glimmered with muted vibrancy, antique lampposts mingling with the soft hum of neon signs, the old world and new entwined in fragile balance. As she walked away, the camera lingered on the diary's worn cover, glinting momentarily in the golden glow, a silent sentinel guarding secrets that would redefine not just a past forgotten but a present awakening. And in the shifting light of dusk, a spectral outline appeared fleetingly by a window, a ghostly silhouette watching, waiting, a bridge between yesterday and tomorrow. The scene settled on Emily's determined figure moving steadily toward an uncertain horizon, the diary a pulsing beacon in her grasp, a symbol of hidden truths, lost lives, and the promise of discovery. The coastal breeze stirred the curtains, carrying the salty tang of the sea mixed with the distant calls of gulls settling into the dusk. Emily sat at the rickety wooden table in her dimly lit apartment, the old diary open before her, its yellowed pages worn and crinkled like fragile leaves. Shadows from the flickering candlelight danced across the room, lending a spectral aura to the ink-stained script that spilled across the fragile pages. Every carefully penned line pulled her deeper into a tapestry of mysteries long past but stirring with uncanny familiarity. The handwriting, so like her own, seemed to pulse with life, beckoning her to unravel secrets hidden beneath every curve and stroke. The air around her thickened with unease as the room's subtle creaks and sighs beckoned the boundaries between past and present to thin. The soft ticking of a nearby antique clock marked time with a relentless, mechanical heartbeat, echoing the rising tension tighten within her chest. Drawn by compulsion more than reason, Emily read on, her voice barely a whisper. The truth is never lost, it waits. Suddenly, a fainting gust pushed the diary's pages, revealing a passage about a hidden mirror, one that revealed not reflections but fractured realities. Her pulse quickened, curiosity igniting a spark that replaced the embers of doubt. This was no ordinary diary. It carried a spectral touch, a bridge between worlds. Hours slipped by unnoticed as Emily cross-referenced the diary's descriptions with places around town, forgotten alleys, shuttered shop windows, and the old lighthouse that clawed into the foggy sky. One evening, as rain spattered against her window, she followed a whisper of the diary's hints to a narrow attic room in an abandoned house. Her fingers trembled as she reached for an ancient cracked mirror resting against a dust-covered wall. Raising it carefully, she stared into its fractured glass and for a fleeting breath saw a silhouette flickering behind her reflection, a shadow both distant and achingly close. Startled and thrilled, Emily clutched her camera, the shutter clicking softly, capturing the ghostly fragment of a presence that seemed to hover just beyond the veil of her perception. Back home, the diary's grip on her mind intensified. The boundary between reality and apparition blurred as strange occurrences became commonplace, whispers in empty rooms, footsteps on creaky floors, and an unshakable feeling of being watched. Her relationships began to strain under the weight of her obsession. Calls from concerned friends went unanswered, invitations declined. The camera bag, once a symbol of her hopes, became a repository of secrets and questions. Yet within her, a fragile resolve was kindling. This was more than a story. It was the pulse of a past life reaching out, a story that had somehow chosen her. Her whispered vow filled the quiet room. I will uncover what's hidden even if it changes everything. As midnight approached, a shadow detached itself from the diary's pages, manifesting in the corner of her apartment, a ghostly silhouette barely visible, yet beckoning, warning, compelling. Emily's gaze met the void where the figure hovered, fear and fascination battling within her frail frame. The diary lay open on the table. The flickering candlelight illuminated a fresh page, inviting her deeper into a labyrinth of secrets. The scene closed on Emily's breath, held tight in anticipation, as the ticking clock's rhythm synced with a spectral heartbeat, an invitation and a challenge entwined in time's mysterious dance. The diary lay open on the edge of Emily's cluttered desk, its aged pages whispering secrets under a flickering desk lamp that cast trembling shadows over her pale hands. The air in the room was thick with a suffocating quiet punctuated only by the soft, erratic ticking of an ancient clock sitting solemnly in the corner. Outside, The evening fog pressed against the windows, wrapping the small coastal town in a cold embrace. Since delving deeper into the diary, Emily felt her reality wavering. The boundaries between past and present blurred, shadows lengthening within and without. The soft creak of the floorboards elsewhere in the house set her nerves on edge, unseen presences threading their way through the air. It was no longer just ink and parchment. It was a living thing, pulsing with suppressed truths and fragile warnings. Her obsession deepened, gnawing at the edges of her once solid relationships. Phone calls went unanswered. Texts remained unopened, the world beyond her sanctuary, the antiquestron apartment, fading to a distant hum. Friends' concerned voices grew distant, their words tinged with skepticism and worry. "Emily, you need to step back," her closest friend had advised, her tone gentle but firm. "You're losing yourself." Emily had only managed a hollow smile in reply, retreating further into the diary's enigmatic embrace. Fragments of the diary's entries began surfacing in her daily existence, fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures in reflective glass, whispered voices skimming just beyond comprehension, shadows folding unnaturally in the corners of her vision. The supernatural presence tied inexplicably to the diary seemed to tighten its grip, a spectral silhouette hovering at the periphery, relentless yet intangible. She found herself drawn to a cracked mirror left behind by previous tenants, an artifact that became a portal of fractured identities. Each glance revealed a shifting tapestry of lives, some familiar, others distorted echoes beckoning her to dive deeper. One reflection morphed fleetingly, showing a version of herself she barely recognized, pinning her essence between past lives and present fears. The diary's entries grew darker, interspersed with warnings and pleas. Emily grappled with the knowledge that some mistakes might not be hers to fix, and some truths could unravel everything she knew about herself. One night, as a thunderstorm raged outside, the room electrified with charged energy. Pages of the diary fluttered violently, as if caught in unseen winds. A sudden knock at the door jolted Emily's heart into her throat. No one was there, but the air hummed with an unnerving presence. Her breath caught as a faint, translucent figure appeared briefly beneath the moonlight filtering through the window, a ghostly silhouette gesturing toward the diary, urging her onward, deeper into mystery and revelation. Emily closed the diary with a trembling hand, her eyes wide with the knowledge that the path she was on demanded sacrifices she was only beginning to fathom. The camera pulled back slowly, leaving Emily alone in the ebbing glow of the candlelight, shadows stretching long in the room like fingers pulling her into deeper secrets. As the storm battered the coastal town, the scene faded to black, an anxious pause in time, heartbeats synchronized with the diary's haunting tick, before the story surged forward into realms unknown. Thunder rumbled far beyond the fog-laden streets of the coastal town, a deep lament like the heartbeat of some ancient beast awaking in the darkness. Inside her dimly lit room, Emily's hands trembled as she traced the uneven lines of the diary's pages, each word a shard of fragile truth piercing through the veil of her perception. The muted sepia glow from the oil lamp cast soft, trembling shadows upon her face, a fragile mask tethered between fear and growing clarity. The entry she stumbled upon shattered her perception so completely that the very floor beneath seemed to quake. It was a passage she had never seen before, written in ink faded but unmistakable, her name spelled out in flowing script, recorded decades before her birth. The diary prophesied moments of her life, choices she had always regarded as her own, now laid bare as guided threads in a weaving far older than she could comprehend. Her breath caught, the air thick with an almost suffocating weight. Memories twisted and morphed, faces blurred, and reality fractured like the cracked mirror on her wall. She turned to the mirror, its fractured glass reflecting 1,000 fragments of herself, each shard trembling in resonance with the secrets revealed. Suddenly, a cold gust swept through the room, stirring the pages of the diary alive. Shadows pooled in corners as a faint spectral silhouette slid into existence by the window, a barrier, both physical and ethereal, separating her from the life she once knew. The apparition gestured silently, a beckoning toward truths buried and dangers yet unseen. Emily's vision blurred, the hum of the town outside mingling with whispers from long-ago voices calling, demanding, warning. Each echo brushed against the edges of the diary's revelations, foreshadowing an unraveling that threatened not just her story but the history etched into the very fabric of the town. The diary now felt less a book and more a living entity, a sentinel guarding weighty truths with a will all its own. Every sentence was a thread pulling her inexorably forward, deeper into mysteries that blurred the boundaries of time and self. Her doubts churned into a turbulent resolve, the fragile ember of belief catching flame despite the encroaching darkness. "Who writes our story?" she whispered, voice barely audible beneath the storm's rising crescendo. "And can it be rewritten?" The mirror offered no answers, but the diary's pages seemed to shimmer, a silent promise that the transformation ahead was both terrifying and necessary. As the thunder cracked louder, the camera held on the diary's open page before the scene dissolved, a final flicker of Emily's reflection blending into spectral light, signaling the precipice of a revelation destined to reshape her world and her identity. The coastal town lay smothered beneath a leaden sky, the wind dragging waves like mournful voices ashore in heavy sighs. Emily's apartment, perched precariously atop a weathered cliff, flickered weakly with the glow of a single candle, its light intoxicated by the shifting shadows that quivered in rhythm with her fractured breaths. The room, once a sanctuary of dreams and whispered hopes, had become a tomb cradling echoes of isolation. Collapsed on the threadbare rug, her gaze was lost in the fractured fragments of the cracked mirror propped against the wall. Each shard splintered her image into countless selves, fragmented, unrecognizable, a kaleidoscope of doubt and broken identity. Her hands, trembling and pale in the feeble candlelight, reached out but recoiled as if the reflections might fracture further with a single touch. Her camera lay discarded nearby, shutter locked, a mute witness to abandoned aspirations. Notebooks spilled onto the floor, their pages blank or smeared with indecipherable scribbles, the ink a fragile sanctuary for the stories that now seemed like distant ghosts. Outside, the torrent of rain pounded against the windows, an unrelenting drum of nature's judgment. The storm's fury mirrored the turbulent tempest roiling within, a ceaseless storm of fear, grief, and a growing terror of unraveling sanity. The diary sat unopened on the cluttered desk, a symbol of secrets too burdensome to bear tonight. The ghostly silhouette that had once beckoned with mystery now oppressed with silent menace, its presence lingering at the edge of perception, a boundary she dared not cross. Friendships had frayed to fragile threads, calls unanswered, and whispers in the town's shadows spoke of madness creeping into the writer's once bright eyes. The world outside had shuddered behind walls of misunderstanding. Her breath caught when a sudden chill crawled across her skin, the candlelight flickered violently, and the distant creak of the floorboards suggested an unseen intrusion. Yet the room remained empty save for the whisper of pages trembling softly in the still air. In the suffocating silence, Emily's voice broke, a fragile lament lost to the storm's howl. "Who am I if not the words I write?" No answer came. The room contracted around her like a shrinking soul, shadows pooling into dark waters, drowning light and hope. As the dawn retreated beyond the storm, the camera lingered on her vacant gaze and fractured reflection, two reflections of a woman unraveling, suspended on the precipice of despair. The steady rhythm of the ticking clock grew ominous, marking a descent not merely into night, but into the deepest ravine of self, where identity fractured and the past spectral chains threatened to drag her irrevocably beneath. The dim light of a single, feeble candle flickered weakly in Emily's cramped room, throwing wavering shadows that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. The night outside was thick and silent, the coastal wind muted against the shuttered windows as if the world itself held its breath, observing the unraveling of a fragile mind. Emily sat curled on the floor, knees drawn to her chest, a fragile fortress against the tide of despair consuming her. Around her, the walls were lined with aging books and scattered notebooks filled with frantic scribbles, attempts to grasp the intangible threads of her reality that were slipping relentlessly through trembling fingers. The air was heavy with the scent of damp paper and forgotten memories, as if the room had become a vessel for lost time and fractured identities. The broken mirror leaned against the wall, its surface cracked and fragmented, mirroring the splintered fragments of Emily's own self. Each shard reflected a different version of Hera, ghost caught between time, a face worn with doubt, fear, and the specter of profound loneliness. The fractured images flickered eerily in the candle's dim glow, insinuating themselves into her consciousness like whispered accusations. The diary lay open in her lap, the pages worn and ink blurred from her trembling hands. The words swirled before her eyes, rewriting her past, rewriting her identity with every haunting entry. The stories she once told herself as her own choices were now inscribed before her birth, a chilling testament to a life governed by unseen hands. Soft, almost imperceptible sounds emerged from the shadows, a distant whisper, the scrape of footsteps not belonging to any living creature. Emily's breath hitched, her heart pounding a chaotic rhythm against ribs that felt too constricted to display such life. The ghostly silhouette she'd seen before seemed to flicker just beyond the edge of vision, a tormenting specter of truths she was both desperate to uncover and dread to face. Her voice was but a fragile tremor, breaking the suffocating quiet. "Am I losing myself?" The room answered with silence so absolute it roared in her ears, crushing the remnants of hope under a tide of isolation. The candle sputtered, flames waned, and darkness pooled in the corners, swallowing traces of light and warmth. Emily's gaze fixed once more on the broken mirror, where reflections twisted and merged, refusing coherence. It was a haunting emblem of her fractured psyche, the tangible manifestation of the distance growing between her and the reality she clung to. Time seemed to slow. Each tick of the clock exaggerated, a metronome counting down to a surrender she fought to resist but felt inexorably close. A breathless pause filled the space, heavy and unyielding, where past and present, life and shadow, intertwined without resolution. In that stillness, Emily found herself teetering on the precipice, a silent, suspended moment before the fall, as the fragile pulse of her spirit flickered uncertainly in the encroaching void. The shadows in Emily's room seemed to thicken, pooling like ink spilled across the delicate wallpaper, muting the golden hues of dusk that once bathed the corner in soft warmth. She sat motionless in the center of the room, clutching the diary to her chest as if it were the last fragile tether to her unraveling self. The fractured mirror nearby reflected a fragmented version of her silhouette, distorted yet undeniably present, a haunting emblem of a soul on the verge of collapse and transformation. Outside, the sea whispered its eternal secrets, waves crashing with muted fury against the rocky shore beneath the cliff. The night's chill seeped beneath the windowpane, threading through the cracks and weaving a cold embrace around the once vibrant flicker of hope now nearly extinguished. Her eyes, glassy and rimmed with exhaustion, traced the faded ink on the diary's open pages, a passage she had never dared to read before. The words danced faintly, illuminated by the dying candlelight, revealing tales written long before her first breaths, events predestined, yet laden with the possibility of choice, of disruption. A soft breeze stirred the candle's flame, casting quivering shadows that morphed into the outline of a figure, a spectral apparition, ethereal yet pregnant with meaning. It hovered silently, its pale hand lifted in a delicate gesture, beckoning her deeper into the labyrinth of revelation. The presence embodied the barriers between past and present, invisible yet profoundly felt. Emily's lips parted, a single whispered word trembling in the stillness. "Why?" No direct answer came, only the chilling recoil of silence and the echo of her own rising heartbeat. Yet within that silence, a subtle thread was woven, a faint spark flickering amidst the darkness. Her thoughts drifted to the cracked mirror. Its fractured reflections no longer merely distorted but revealed shifting realities, unveiling layers of identity she had long suppressed. Each glimpse promised perspectives beyond what she had known, invitations to rewrite the narrative caged by the past. A sudden rustle stirred the pages, revealing a hidden note, a cryptic clue penned in hurried script, barely legible but unmistakably real. Its message was a lifeline, hinting at a perspective she had yet to see, a path obscured but accessible at the threshold of fear and courage. The camera lingered on her trembling hand as she clasped the note, fingers curling around fragile paper now heavy with possibility. The candlelight grew steadier, casting a circle of glow that pushed back the encroaching shadows, illuminating the contours of a face awakening from despair. Outside the window, the first stars peeked shyly from behind scudding clouds, celestial sparks promising guidance in the vast unknown. Emily inhaled deeply, the weight of past agony settling into a quiet determination as the diary's ancient secrets whispered of redemption and renewal. The scene ended in a silent tablecloth diary held firmly, the cracked mirror reflecting a woman poised between darkness and light, on the cusp of embracing the mysteries that would redefine her journey. The first light of dawn seeped softly through the ancient windows of the town's abandoned chapel, casting a gentle golden hue over the dust motes dancing lazily in the air. Shadows clung to the crumbling pews and stained glass, flickering like whispers of ghosts long past. Emily stood at the altar, the diary clasped tightly in her trembling hands, the pages inside fluttering with a life of their own, as if eager to reveal what had been hidden beneath layers of darkness. Outside, the wind carried a whispering chorus from the coast, a lullaby of the sea's eternal rhythm, the pulse of time that refused to be silenced. The storm that had raged all night had finally broken, releasing a delicate balance of light and shadow that reflected her internal awakening. Her breath was slow but steady now, synchronized with the slow, deliberate ticking of a nearby clock, its hands creeping forward, uncompromising yet whispering of new beginnings. The diary's pages shimmered faintly in the morning light, revealing a fresh inscription, one she hadn't yet read. Her eyes traced the inked words, a fragile echo of hope and a promise of change woven through centuries of secrecy. The spectral silhouette, once an ominous barrier, hovered at the edge of her vision, a faint outline in the soft glow, ambiguous yet undeniably present, like a guardian witnessing her fragile transformation. Slowly, Emily lowered the diary onto the altar, her fingers lingering over the leather cover as if to memorize the texture, the weight of history, of truth, that now coursed through her fingertips. The weight of despair that had so often threatened to drown her was beginning to lift, replaced by a tentative tremor of courage. A gentle, almost imperceptible hum filled the room, a sound unlike any prior, resonant with the promise of renewal. She closed her eyes, allowing her senses to attune to this new breath of life radiating from the sacred space. The muted colors around her softened, warmth spreading in delicate waves as the morning sun seeped through broken stained glass, casting rainbows over the cracked stone floors. Softly, a whisper broke the quieton inner voice, speaking with a clarity she'd long denied. You are more than shadows. You are the bridge between what was and what can be. A flicker of a smile touched her lips as she lifted her gaze to the now luminous altar. The spectral silhouette, acknowledging her newfound resolve, nodded slowly in unspoken acknowledgement of her awakening, a shared recognition that change, fragile yet inevitable, had begun. In that sacred moment, the storm's remnants beyond the town faded into silence, leaving behind a stillness that spoke of hope reborn. The camera lingered on Emily's face, her expression a mosaic of vulnerability and tentative strength as the dawn's early glow bathed the chapel in a promise of transformation, a dawn that whispered of new paths and the courage to walk them. The dawn broke with a quiet inevitability, spilling warm amber light across the coastal town's ancient stones and twisting alleyways. Emily stood at the threshold of her workshop, the air still tinged with the remnants of night's cold shadows. In her hands, she carefully held the diary, its cover now sturdy and darkened, emblematic of hurdles overcome and truths confronted. Inside, the diary lay open on the table, amid a sea of tools and half-finished clocks, each ticking softly in unison, their rhythmic pulse echoing her new resolve. Her gaze lingered on the freshly written pages, where her own words intertwined with the old symbols of time, an act of rebellion and redemption. The spectral silhouette, previously an ominous barrier, hovered quietly at the room's edge, its presence now a whisper of support and understanding. A gentle breath escaped her lips as she traced the inked lines, each stroke a step toward reclaiming her story, her identity. With a resolve born from despair, she reached for a pen, and began to pen a new ending, one of forgiveness, of releasing the past, and of embracing her future. The surrounding shadows receded as warm sunlight spilled through the cracked windows, casting golden hues over the cluttered desks and ancient clocks, symbols of resilience and the relentless march of time. The sound of the clocks grew steadier, more harmonious, a symphony of renewed purpose. She whispered softly, words filled with tentative hope and unspoken strength, "This is my time to change." Outside, in the stillness of dawn, the sea's gentle roar and the wind's whisper melded into a lullaby of rebirth. The ghostly figure, once a barrier to truth, seemed to dissolve into the burgeoning light, its silent blessing a poignant acknowledgement of her transformation. Emily's fingers lingered on the diary's cover for a moment longer before she closed it carefully, the click of the clasp echoing softly an audible seal of her new beginning. Her eyes reflected a flicker of awe, a silent acknowledgement that she had crossed a threshold from darkness into the promise of dawn. The scene lingered on her silhouette, bathed in the radiant glow of sunrise, as she stepped forward, bold, unafraid, and finally free. Beyond the window, the horizon stretched vast and full of uncharted possibilities, the light of day heralding not just a new chapter but a renewed hope that time itself was hers to command. The morning sun heralded a new dawn, spilling radiant amber light across the ancient town, casting long, golden shadows that danced with the early breeze. Emily stood atop the craggy cliffs overlooking the town, gripping the diary close against her chest. Her face, once a mask of fragility and doubt, now radiated quiet strength, illuminated by the powerful glow of realization. Behind her, the waves crashed against the rocks, echoing the tumult she had endured: loss, self-doubt, chaos, and the silent promise that this moment marked a true turning point. Her vintage coat billowed softly in the wind, a symbol of her journey through a race, an emblem of resilience pulled from the tangled web of past lives. She took a measured breath, the cool air filling her lungs with clarity, and gently opened the diary one last time. Its pages shimmered in the sunlight, not as relics of despair but as sacred scrolls of her reclaimed destiny. The spectral silhouette, which had once loomed as a barrier between her and her truth, now hovered softly nearby, its form a whisper of acknowledgement, approving of her newfound resolve. With unshakable conviction, Emily penned her final words into the diary, her own story, her terms, her redemption. Each stroke was a declaration to herself that the past no longer defined her. She was its master, its interpreter. "This is my truth now," she whispered, voice steady and unrelenting. "I choose to write my own ending." The ghostly figure slowly dissolved into a wisp of shimmering light, dissolving into the dawn, a symbol of silence and acceptance, the final barrier broken. The sky blushed with hues of crimson and gold, sealing her transformation in a cinematic tableau of liberation. As the camera panned out, Emily stood tall against the expansive horizon, the wind caressing her hair, the diary clasped firmly in her hand. Around her, the ancient clocks, silent witnesses to her journey, began to chime in unison, marking the moment of her rebirth. In that breathless silence, amidst a symphony of dawn and time's rebuke, she embraced her story whole, unfractured, and finally at peace. The scene faded on her silhouette, poised on the edge of horizons yet unexplored, a testament to resilience, truth, and the unbreakable spirit reborn in the heart of the dawn. The morning sun filtered softly across the small coastal town, casting a gentle amber glow that touched the rooftops and spilled over the tranquil sea. Emily stood on the balcony of her modest home, the wind whispering through her curly auburn hair, carrying scents of salt and pine. In her hands, she delicately held the diary, the pages now fully rewritten, the truths laid bare, and the secrets from centuries past finally aligned with her own story. Behind her, the landscape was silent, a picture of calm after years of storms, both external and internal. The town's ancient clock tower silently marked time, its battered face glowing in the golden light, a steadfast symbol of resilience and the endless march of history. The shadows of doubt and despair had lifted, replaced by a quiet understanding and an unshakable sense of peace. She took a slow, deliberate breath, the stillness settling deep into her bones. Her fingertips brushed the diary's cover, textured and warm beneath her touch, an object that had once seemed cursed with knowledge, now a vessel of liberation. She closed her eyes for a moment, listening to the rhythmic lapping of waves and the faint ticking of the clocks around her. In that silence, she felt the threads of her journey, destiny, choice, loss, and awakening woven into a tapestry of profound connection. The spectral figure that once haunted her, the barriers between past and present, the fractured mirror reflecting her fractured soul, all had found their place in this quiet dawn. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips as she gently set the diary down on the railing, stepping back to gaze across the horizon. The sky was painted in soft pastels, blending hues of pink, violet, and golden, artist's masterpiece of timeless renewal. Her eyes shone with a renewed clarity, a recognition that the truth had set her free not just from the secrets of the diary, but from herself. The shadows had dissolved, and she finally understood that her story was her own to write anew. She lingered there, in the peaceful stillness, letting the moment soak into her heart, a silent acknowledgement that her journey, fraught with pain and revelation, had crafted a new beginning. The world around her continued its quiet rhythm, a hymn to hope, resilience, and the unbreakable human spirit. As the camera slowly pulled away, capturing her silhouette against the rising sun, a gentle serenity settled in her expression. The horizon beckoned, limitless and full of promise, as she turned and walked back into her home, air steps light, her heart at peace, and her story finally hers to tell. The first light of dawn spilled softly over the cliff, bathing the landscape in hues of lavender and gold. Emily stood at the precipice, clutching the diary, her hands steadier now, the weight of years of pain and revelation lifted like the mist that floated gently below. Her gaze was fixed on the horizon, where the sky opened wide into a canvas of endless possibility, the ocean whispering secrets only she now understood. The breeze traced delicate patterns through her hair, carrying the scent of salt and new beginnings. Within her chest, a quiet awareness blossomed in acceptance of her past, her lineage, and the truths long buried but now revealed. The spectral figure, once shrouded in shadows and unspoken fears, moved silently beside her, a gentle nod conveying reassurance, acknowledgement, and release. Slowly, Emily turned the diary over in her hands, its pages now a testament not to suffering but to liberation. Her reflection shimmered in the calm waters below, fractured and whole, embodying the journey of discovery, fractured by the past, made whole by understanding. A faint smile broke across her face as she closed the diary, the gesture symbolic of releasing the burden of secrets. In this moment, she felt the unshakable truth that forgiveness is a process, a slow unfolding that begins in acceptance, grows through compassion, and culminates in peace. Her eyes lingered on the horizon, where the sun, like a golden eye of the universe, pushed upward, eager to embrace the day. She took a deep breath, the cool air filling her with clarity and purpose. The camera panned outward, capturing her silhouette against the rising light, the epitome of resilience. The ocean responded softly, waves lapping in harmony with her heartbeat, whispering of mountains crossed and horizons yet to be explored. The moment settled into sublime silence, a pause in time that celebrated renewal. The landscape shimmered, a symphony of light, shadow, and the promise that some wounds, once acknowledged, can become the seed for new life. In that stillness, Emily, now unburdened, allowed herself to dream again, trusting that the truth she uncovered, her truth had finally set her free. The scene faded on her figure, small against the vastness but radiating with an inner strength that could navigate any storm, any shadow, any past that dared to define her. The dawn broke lavish and golden, spilling across the jagged cliffs and quiet bay of the town like a final benediction. Emily stood alone on the edge, the wind softly tousling her hair, clutching the diary so tenderly it seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Her eyes, luminous with newfound serenity, traced the horizon where sky met sea in a seamless embrace of peace and infinite possibility. Behind her, the landscape was transforming a tableau of silence and reconciliation. The ghostly silhouette that once hovered like a shadow of doubt, an embodiment of barriers between past and present thought, dissolved into the morning light, leaving only whispers of acknowledgement and release. Once a barrier, now a bridge, silently offering forgiveness for what was and what could be. In her hands, the diary lay closed, its cover smooth and unblemished, a vessel bearing the weight of revelations no longer burdened by fear. She gazed at it quietly, understanding that the truths she uncovered had woven a tapestry of strength, resilience, and self-discovery. The fractured mirror of her mind was mended, the broken reflections realigned into a coherent whole, a symbol of her fractured past now unified. A gentle breath of wind carried the scent of salt and bloom, calming her soul. Her fingers brushed the cover lovingly, a silent prayer of gratitude for the journey, not for the pain and darkness that nearly consumed her, but for the clarity that set her free. The camera pulled back slowly, capturing her silhouette against the sprawling horizon, a figure reborn in the light of dawn. The landscape, awash in warm hues, suggested a future ripe with promise, an uncharted road laid open before her, where shadows once reigned. In that moment of stillness, a profound peace settled, an echo of eternity, a promise that some wounds, once understood, become the roots for renewal. Her figure stood tranquil, steadied by the secrets of the past and the serenity of the present, gazing into the endless unfolding of tomorrow. And as the scene faded into silence, the gentle lapping of the waves and the whisper of the wind remained an eternal testament to healing, memory, and the unbreakable spirit that, even after darkness, finds its dawn. What would you do if a ghost rewrote your past? Share your thoughts below.